all across America and around the world. This is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio.
Good day. I'm Jim Fausone. I'm the officer of the deck today here on Veterans Radio, and thanks for joining us. We've got some interesting stories for you. We always want to remind you you can find more about Veterans Radio at its Facebook site or at the web, veteransradio.org, where we're on the web 24/7. You can find a lot of our podcasts there as well. We post new ones every Tuesday, so you can get a new story, a new interview, something you didn't know before by going to veteransradio.org. And before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First up, we want to thank National Veteran Business Development Council, nvbdc.org. It was established to certify both service-disabled and veteran-owned businesses. You'll find out how they can help your business by going to nvbdc.org. We want to thank Legal Help for Veterans. Legal Help for Veterans fights for veterans' disability rights all across the nation. You can reach them at 800-693-4800 or on the web at legalhelpforveterans.com. And finally, PuroClean. PuroClean is the paramedics of property damage. It provides water damage remediation, flood water removal, fire and smoke damage remediation, mold removal, biohazard cleanup. It also has a focus on veteran franchisees. You can learn more about them by going to puroclean.com. We just want to remind you that Veterans Radio podcasts are available on all your favorite streaming platforms, including rss.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Rees Across America Radio. So wherever you are, you can find us. We were recently identified as in the 15th spot, if you will, of the top 100 veteran-centric podcasts by FeedSpot. So we're really pretty proud of being in the top 15. So listen in wherever you're at to veteransradio.org and its podcasts. Is that right? We want to welcome to Veterans Radio today, Derek Adametz, a naval aviator, spent a long time in the Navy, is out now, and that explains kind of the background drop for him with the plane behind him. But more importantly, Derek, you have written a book. It's your story, kind of a personal memoir called Unbreakable Wings: Piloting the Impossible Journey Through Cancer and Naval Aviation. And we just gave it away a little bit by the title about some of the struggles. But before we get there, how did a nice kid from a small town in Wisconsin get turned into a naval aviator? What was the impetus?
It kind of started early, but I didn't recognize it until later. Being on the farm and growing up, and there's always crop dusters flying overhead, and being a kid sitting on a tractor, raking hay or doing yard work or throwing bales, there just was always something intriguing about it. And then, of course, 1986 comes along, and I'm a young kid, and Top Gun comes out, and there's a part in the book where I just wanted to see Short Circuit. Man, that Johnny Five is alive. That was the movie for me, and Dad forced me to this movie called Top Gun, and I went kicking and screaming. And when I came out, I'm like, that's what I want to do. It's like both parts clicked, that watching that plane fly overhead when I was young and seeing, the military aircraft flying off the aircraft carrier. I'm like, I finally, for the first time, figured, I think that's what I want to do.
I think a lot of people can relate to this story in that they've had sort of portions of your upbringing. And by that, I mean great relationship with your dad, great relationship with your grandpa, farm life, hard work, high school sports. Give us that flavor, because that's really, Derek, where your foundation is built.
Yeah, it's, everybody has a story, and nobody really knows everyone else's story, and your story is the only one that you know. And growing up, since I can remember, it was get down on the barn, you're helping milk the cows, right? And then as a young kid, you don't do much, and as you grow older, you kind of take on a lot more responsibility. And there's no vacations, there's no breaks, right? It's a long day of work in the field just to come home at 7 p.m. and then you got to run to the barn and feed the dogs and milk the cows. And I think that constant just work ethic is just kind of how, when you develop at that age, that's just was my mind. It was just built to get up in the morning and work all day. And if you can eat, that's great. But if you miss a couple meals, well, that's just too bad because there's chores to do.
And it doesn't matter how skinny or small you are, you still got to throw that bale of hay, don't you?
Yeah, those bales of hay, thank God they got lighter when I got bigger, but those first couple I picked up, they were, I think, probably as heavy as I was.
Well, and again, what's very relatable from a Midwestern standpoint is those high school years. And you had a couple of challenges in those years that maybe, again, were foundational for challenges you were going to have in the future and get over. So talk a little bit about the high school years and kind of how that built into your character.
Yeah, I think it, growing up on a farm, you're eating a lot of dairy, right? So I call it my dairy-fueled farm physique, right? So I'm entering high school, probably the largest kid in the class. I'm going to be the center of the football team, and a couple of my friends encouraged me to run cross country, right? And thank God they did in hindsight, but there I was, that freshman year of high school in cross country. Everybody's clapping at me as I come across the finish line 10 minutes after everybody else, and they already have the chute already cleaned up. But again, I wasn't going to give up. So it goes back to kind of that farm work as, hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And, I lost the weight and went through, and there was some challenges there. And, I don't know if that goes into college too, where, we talk about if you're getting into, college is great. I finally have it all figured out. I love running. I'm running 10 miles a day or every other day. And, college is coming to an end. And all of a sudden there's a huge medical emergency where my lung decides it's had enough air.
Yeah, exactly. But so you went to the University of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Like a good farm boy. But again, there's not a lot of cash around. So how did you get through college?
Well, obviously, growing up on a farm, it was I was on my own, right? And that was pretty clear from the beginning. If you want to go to college, go to college. And so, the whole thing about being a pilot's kind of coming into view. How am I going to get money for college? And so, getting on an old school typewriter, I guess it was a word processor back in the day. There were no computers. Tip, tip, tick, tick, tick as the fingers went across the keyboard. I typed up my application for both the Academy and ROTC. And that was how I was going to get in. And if I didn't get either one of those, I probably wasn't going to college. But achieved both. But my guidance counselor sat me down one day and said, I think you're a ROTC guy. You got way too much energy to go to the academy and be kind of combined in and sit in those rooms all day and not get outside those walls. And so he really convinced me to take that ROTC scholarship, go to Madison, do the military thing. They pay for college. And then that's kind of what got me there.
I think today so many people sort of rule out or don't even think about ROTC, and you went to Naval ROTC again with that idea that I want to ultimately be an aviator. But I think a lot of people don't even consider it, maybe because they don't know anybody who's gone through it. Talk to us about that experience, and would you today recommend to kids, hey, look at the ROTC scholarship program?
Yeah, I think everybody looks at it from the military point of view, and social media gives you almost too much information, and not all of it is real, right? Top Gun wasn't real. There's nothing in Top Gun that was real life Navy, but it's a movie, and it's meant to be a movie. And even today, the commercials you see, it's not really what the military is. And I don't know if I would have made it through college without it, right? Because the first day, you're sitting there, you're at attention, you're making uniform, they're putting you in uniforms, and you're marching around, and it instills that mental toughness. I think I already had it, but I never realized it until you get into ROTC. And then they have expectations. You just can't go out and do what you want. You have a GPA expectation or the scholarship goes away, and you're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to march on Tuesdays, and you're in uniform and you're walking around the McLean Center where the Badgers play football practice, and you're learning things, right? And it instills that a character, I'll say, as well, right? It changes who you are as a person into a more responsible, mature kind of character. And I'm not sure I would have matured as quickly if I didn't have that.
It sort of accelerates growing up to be to be an adult. I think
that's right.
One way to look at it. because if you don't mature quickly, you'll be out, and you'll be out without that scholarship, and you'll be spending your days back on the farm. So there's a little incentive there. But we're back to, and I think in high school you had an eye problem.
Yeah.
We skipped that. I want to mention that because then we're going to talk about the problem in college. Then we're going to talk about the problem in the Navy. So let's start with the eye problem.
There's so many problems, Jim. I appreciate you keeping me in line there because we were good there. So the first problem was just the weight, really. And, losing the weight was the problem. And then there was a day on a tennis court. And if you were back in the 80s, there was no safety equipment, right? So we were having a tennis thing for Jim, right? Where we go and learn how to play tennis and keep score. And they had a little ball machine and we'd hit it back. And one day I look up trying to fill the balls in the ball machine, and my buddy of mine hit a tennis ball back and hit me square in the eye. And no goggles, no protective equipment. We just didn't think about that stuff back then. And, I kind of let it go until I ran into a neighbor, and she saw my eye and it was purple. Usually your purple isn't a color when you go for your eye color on any kind of application. And she could see there was blood pooling in my eye and grabbed me and took me home and ended up in the hospital. And it was a lymphoma. And so the tennis ball didn't pop the eye, but it made this big packet of blood back on the retina. And so I had to kind of sit in the hospital. And where this comes is now I'm scared, right? I'm just a young, I think, sophomore at the time in high school. And they have to patch both my eyes because, as you know, if you move one eye, the other eye is going to move. And so if I have one eye free, I'm still going to look around. And so it was the first time for 7 days I had sat there in complete darkness and stillness and blindness. And you kind of get in your head. I really wasn't prepared for how hard and difficult that was to get through that time.
Yeah. And again, veteran radio listeners, we're talking to this pilot who had this dream from being a young kid. Well, we all know you got to be able to see to fly, and you got to be 7 days of not being able to look out. You got to be thinking, is that dream over with? Obviously, you overcame that problem. Everything healed up. We get to college. Life is beautiful. Everything's wonderful. And then you run into another medical problem with this time with the lung. Tell us.
Yeah, I definitely thought the eye might be a distractor as we got there, but there was a lot of time lapse between sophomore and high school, but still it was on my mind for that first entrance physical, right? Are they going to find that little scar tissue in my eye? And, back in those days, we didn't have internet where you could look things up. So what you knew is what you knew. And so that was.
And actually, that also means that the medical exam couldn't find a digital record of that problem.
That's right. That is true.
Which today has often created bumps in the road because they find, when you were a kid, you had this problem or that problem. So, but let's get us to college because this becomes even more dramatic.
Yeah, the issues definitely amplify as they move along. But yeah, I never really happened to mention that eye. I just forgot about it too when I filled out that application. I don't know why, I just did. But yeah, in college, college was going great, and I was really in shape. Things were going well, and it really wasn't until my senior year, that last year, where I kind of crossed that threshold. Like, hey, I was a little bit excited. I'll even say a little bit arrogant, right? The whole world's in front of me, and I'm going to flight school, and I get accepted. And it was that beautiful Friday afternoon after classes in the fall, and the leaves were turning, and I had my baseball cap, my Badger cap on backwards with my Walkman pinned to my shorts, listen to my Whitesnake cassette, and I go out on a run, and I come back, and all of a sudden I'm about a mile from home, and it feels like someone stabbed me in the back. And I actually looked around to see if there was an assailant, right? Like it felt that real. And then come the weekend, like the lung hurt, I'm kind of moving around, and my lungs sloshing around like there's a little bit of water in my lung. It's it's hard to understand what's going on. My breathing rate elevates quite a bit. I get through Friday night, I get through Saturday, I go to the emergency room on Sunday, and I'm sitting there breathing like I'm running a marathon. Go up to the front desk, they have me fill out paperwork. I'm panting like a dog, sitting trying to fill this paperwork out, hand it back, and I sit in the ER for 45 more minutes, just almost unable to breathe. Can't take anymore. I go up and ask, and they say it's going to be some time. I said, well, I can't do this anymore. I go home. So I go home, lay down, go to bed. Again, panting away, but laying down kind of helped. Next morning, I get up. It's Monday, so the University of Wisconsin Medical Clinic was open. So I'm like, let's go in there because I can't go to class like this. I can hardly breathe. It's labored breathing. My chest is heavy. I go in. They take an X-ray, and before I even know what's going on, I get thrown in a wheelchair into the back of an ambulance and just sent to the emergency room at University of Wisconsin Hospital. And so I have no idea what's going on. Right at this point, I don't even know if I have a thought because it's all so dramatic. They rush me in, throw me on the table. I mean, it wasn't really nice like you see in the movies. Like it was tossing me around, and they put me on my side, pull my shirt up. Nurse grabs my hand, starts talking to me, and I see out of my left eye this doctor just kind of feeling with my ribs, takes a scalpel, and poof, right between the rib cage. Still got the scar today, still a little sensitive. Sounds like a gigantic release of air. I pass out. The pain is immeasurable, right? Like I've never experienced anything at this time in my life. Wake up, tube in my chest. Doctor comes in. I have a spontaneous pneumothorax. Spontaneous because it happened on its own. Pneumothorax, I have a collapsed lung. Left lung was completely collapsed. My heart was on the right side of my body. My esophagus looked like a question mark. I was breathing on a half, and all that pressure was on my heart. So it was a tension pneumothorax where my heart could have stopped any time because it just couldn't overcome the pressure of that air escape in my lungs. So that's what I had to look forward to right at my senior year, right before I was ready to leave for flight school.
Yeah, again, this is one of these medical complications nobody can anticipate. And there's a couple of choices that you just sort of fold the tent, call it a day, or figure out how you're going to get through it with some support. You got through it. Tell us about getting through it, because they kind of have to glue your lung back up together, it seems.
Yeah, this was really where I was ready to give up, probably the first time, because I thought, no way, a pilot needs eyes. I'm questionable at that. A pilot needs lungs. I don't think there's any way. And once the doctor went and did surgery, he came back and he told me he put a couple rows of staples in the hole in the top of my lung. And what they usually do is they scrape the scar tissue or scrape the lung so it's irritated. And when the lung inflates, it would adhere itself to the wall to kind of keep that lung inflated. So just to prevent any kind of additional tear in the lung. Well, because I waited 3 days and I kind of went out with friends and there's smoky bars back then and inhaled all that air, I had an infection. He's like, well, I didn't have to scrape it because there was kind of an infection in there.
Oh, how lucky.
So that's great. I didn't think anything about it. I'm like, okay, but you took care of it, right? Until I think it was that night or the night after when my that infection kicked over, and all of a sudden my temperature spiked to 106. I'm starting to hallucinate. I'm starting to have trouble breathing again, and I don't think I'm going to make it through the night. I just had that feeling. Call my girlfriend at the time, said, hey, can you come with me? I just don't think I'm going to make it. I need somebody here. And, this is the point where she's making excuses and the relationship ends right there. Right. So it's not just the lung. It's not just flight school. I was dating this girl for 5 years, my high school sweetheart, and she leaves me sitting there in a hospital. So if there's a culmination where I'm just ready to give up, it was that point right there.
And as I say, you get through this, but it's not without a lot of time passing and I don't know, I'm not sure I'd call it luck, but, fate, because now you medically have to recover, physically have to recover, mentally have to recover. And oh, by the way, I got to go see the flight surgeon. So talk to us about kind of what's going on during that period in your head and I guess physically.
Yeah, and so, I thought for sure they'd just pull my papers, and I don't know if I'm even in the Navy's going to take me anymore. So before I even got to the flight surgeon, there were days and days where I couldn't walk, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't laugh, I could barely go to the bathroom because that lung, remember, all that rib cage just healing was, the rest of that semester was a blur. But like you said, I get to flight school, they let me go, but I'm like, they'd let me go because that's why I selected, but there's no way I'm going to get through that naval aviation medical physical, right? Like this is over. So I didn't even unpack my clothes. I just kind of found a hotel and stayed and went in there. And if you've ever sweat before, I'll tell you, I was sweating in front of that doctor. It was a full day of tests. They looked at everything. I didn't lie about the lung because I still had the open scar pretty much. And he looked at me and he looked at my record, and there was a pregnant pause that lasted 2 years if it lasted 30 seconds, right? And I'm for sure he'd be like, sorry, like I was just waiting for that. And when he's like, oh, you're cleared, and he signed that medical clearance form and handed it to me, otherwise known as an upchit for those aviators, Boy, I was shocked. I thought I'd be happy, but I think I was shocked and stunned in that moment that I'm sitting here with an upshit like I'm gonna fly, because I never
And
thought it was possible.
and what year is this now? What, Derek?
This right now is 1996. So I graduated
So
96, so it'd been late 96, maybe early 97.
so off to flight school, and you do some activities at I think Pensacola, is it? And you get through flight school, and then you're off to, I think maybe it's Puerto Rico.
Yeah. So the quick is you go to flight school in Pensacola. Everybody goes there, aviation pre-flight indoctrination, and then you kind of do T-34s. I selected P-3s because it seemed like the great kind of personality and lifestyle I wanted, even though Top Gun was all jets. Go to Corpus Christi, Texas for advanced. You get winged down there, send you to Jacksonville, Florida, and that's how I learned to fly the P-3. That's a couple months. It's now about beginning of 1998, and I'm finishing up.
No more problems. The rest of your career is just straightforward, isn't it?
That's what I thought. Just like you said, hey, the past is behind me. I'm in the Navy. One, I never thought I'd get here after all of that. Nothing else is going to go wrong, right? Big question mark.
And
so
then
I select from my squadron. They're on deployment. They give me a call. And then I'm like, all right. So I go down there, meet them in Puerto Rico, do a couple flights in Puerto Rico. We go to Panama with my crew for a month. I am living the dream. Panama, if you've never been, Panama City, Panama, man, it was so much fun. Flying out of Rodman Air Force Base there. And then one day I wake up and we head back to Puerto Rico just for some little bit of training and some rest. And we're going to Panama again the next day. And I'm super excited. And I wake up with some chest pain.
oh boy.
So I'm like, all right, it was so bad I couldn't get out of bed. It was, again, back to the lung where it felt like someone stabbed me in the back. And I'm like, I'm breathing okay. I can't be the lung. So I'm like, let me go to the doc. I got an hour before pre-flight. So I go to the doc. They take some x-rays. He takes a long time. He comes back. I'm now late for pre-flight. Now I'm not worried about the health anymore. I need to get to the plane. I just really want to get back in the cockpit. I can't think about another medical problem. And he didn't even tell me what it was. He's like, sorry, you're down. And tomorrow you're leaving on a medevac to Bethesda, Maryland for some tests. That's all I heard. So I packed a small bag thinking, oh, I'm going to be back. He didn't say anything about a long-term stay. He just said some tests. And so I didn't take anything. I jumped in a plane. Flight surgeon came with me. We jumped to Bethesda, and there's no time wait, right? We go right to the hospital, and it is different place after different place. ENT, throat. They took some blood. They took some bone marrow. And all of a sudden, I'm in front of the oncologist. I don't know what an oncologist is back in those days, right? And then he sits down in front of me, and he's like, so the test came back. They took a little bump out of my neck, part of a lymph node, and he's like, well, we got the results back, and you have Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I look around the room a little bit like, are you talking to me? Like, I'm healthy. I'm running. Like, what do you mean Hodgkin's lymphoma, and what is that?
Yeah, this is, again, one of these, like, okay, when is enough, both from a personal standpoint, but now it seems that's a cancer diagnosis that's got to sound like, okay, that ends my career.
Yeah. Yep. And it wasn't even understanding the cancer, because it's, again, I didn't really have internet. You can't just go research Hodgkin's lymphoma and gives you all the symptoms. You're like, oh, here's a bunch of pamphlets he gave me, and I only knew what I could read in front of me. And he's like, and by the way, in 10 days, you start chemo. And there's a 50% chance you could be sterile from chemo. So now I'm thinking, wow, so now I'm not flying. I'm starting this chemotherapy. So now I'm starting to, the gravity's starting to kick in, and like, well, this is big, right? Like this, I actually didn't start thinking about flying. I'm just now thinking about, am I going to make it through this?
And one of the things too, I think most of our veteran radio listeners, having been in the military or have friends and family in the military, understand that the military medicine is pretty damn good. That the doctors and the nurses and the specialists really kind of have trained, and some of these folks are the best of the best. And you received great medical care getting you through this, but at that point, you're just sort of thinking, what the heck has my life turned into?
Yeah, in a lot of the book, I really kind of anchored at this point, because there was a lot, it's not just go to chemo and go home. And, every cancer is different, every treatment's different. And so you all fall under the same umbrella, but everybody has different experience, even with the same chemo. So in the book, I anchor a little bit about kind of going treatment to treatment and kind of I call it the staircase into the basement. You kind of level off and then they step down, a chemo level off and step down, and you never quite make it back up. And it's just a continual kind of body degradation from losing the hair to losing the weight to just no energy. And it was great care. But my body was taking a physical toll. And there were times where I didn't think I was going to make it out. But they told me 6 months, 6 cycles. So every cycle is 2 treatments. So 12 treatments, 6 months, and I'm done. And they take a CAT scan to make sure the tumors are reducing. And, an emergency within emergency then happens at month 6, right? I get to month 6. I'm actually got some energy thinking, hey, this is it. I'm going to go in. The doctor's going to say I'm done and I can leave. And he says, well, there's a further reduction in the tumor, so we're going to have to either do radiation. Well, first he just says, we're going to do radiation. And then I fought with the doctor a little bit. I said, I'm not doing radiation. This is working. And so then he's like, well, then you're doing 2 more cycles of chemo, 4 more treatments. And at that point, any kind of hope I had just went out the window. I'm like, I can't do 4 more treatments. I am not going to make it through this. And so that was kind of an emergency within an emergency.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about who the audience for this book is, because while we're talking about it here on Veterans Radio, and certainly a lot of veterans, even post-service, have a lot of medical challenges that I think this book would help them realize, hey, stick with it, you'll get through it. But when you were writing this, who did you feel your audience was?
So I think that was the hardest part of writing the book was, one, I had to dig up a lot of memories and thoughts that I buried, right? And so I had to go through those emotions. And so, I got the chills a lot when I started thinking about the chemo, and there's a lot more in there packed in as you read the book, and we'll let the readers kind of maybe experience the book. But, I had to, if I'm going to write this honestly and raw, I have to put myself back in there. And so at first I thought I was just going to write it to people who are undergoing cancer, going through an issue. But the more I wrote, it doesn't matter what the challenge is. The problem is it's resilience redefined, right? It's about embracing discomfort. This whole life of mine has been almost discomfort. And I just have to embrace where I'm at, redefine what resilience is, and just find my way with grit. And it's just a story of true grit for anybody who needs a story that really has a lot of grit in it.
And get through that problem, because the other side's going to be better. The other side's going to, it may be opportunities you never thought you wanted or would experience, but there'll be those opportunities. And that's what happened. You kind of get through the cancer treatments, and then it's like, well, now what? You're not going to put me back in the plane right away. What do I do? And there were opportunities you never would have expected, right?
Yeah, I think too, it's not explicitly stated in the book, but I think you get the sense after reading it is life changes now. Like my life is never going to be what I imagined for the past 20 plus years, right? I'm like, at this point in my life, I'm just along for the ride, I feel, right? Like I have no control. It's just medical emergency after medical emergency. And I feel like I'm just on the back of the bus getting bounced around. And, but I got to keep fighting, right? As long as there's a breath, I got to keep fighting. And I get through those 2, and it wasn't the easiest 2 months. And then I'm on my own, right? And this is kind of the hard part is, back in the day, I'm just a young JG, right? I just had my first squadron. I'm kind of got left at the hospital. I don't really have military Navy leadership helping me right now because it's a hospital. It's not a command. And so I've got to pave my own way. And some of the struggles then afterwards, the reason it says piloting the possible journey through cancer and naval aviation is some of the biggest challenges of my professional life are about to come. It's easy to talk about the personal ones with the cancer in the lung, but, professionally now I'm different. Like I've spent a year in chemo while all my other colleagues are at their squadron. And now I've BUMED, I have to wait 2 years before I could ever think about getting a medical certificate or a dump shit to fly again. So I've got to find where to go. And I like to go to Monterey, go to Naval Postgraduate School, one, because I know I got to rebuild my mind because it is deteriorating quickly. And we talk about the chemo brain in there and, how that's treating me. And so I go to Monterey and I go to get a master's in mechanical engineering, which would never been an opportunity otherwise. And so, I made that happen by just the determination and the perseverance to get through.
And finding a new path and not expecting somebody necessarily to give you the path, but for you, the book talks about who you had to write to and who you had to talk to, and hey, I'm way behind these other guys in terms of experience. I'll never get promoted. I've got to move myself into a position to kind of catch up, maybe is the right word, or at least try to catch up. All of that occurs, but it's because you have grit and determination and you don't give up. Geez, I think I hear a kid from the farms in Wisconsin here, right? That's part of where that upbringing really comes back.
Yep, and that was a recommendation. That wasn't really in the first draft, and somebody who read through my draft recommended. He's like, I want to know. He used the word. It was grit. It wasn't grit, but it was like grit. He's like, I want to know why you have so much grit. You need to talk about your upbringing because I think that makes the book so much better. And there's a fine line between selfish and selflessness, right? And so I felt going through that first squadron when I was a whole 2 years, 3 years behind, I had to be selfish and put myself on a path to succeed while trying to be selfless too, and just kind of being part of the team. And that was hard to balance. I made a lot of people very upset because the Navy's not structured like that. They're very structured with their expectations, and it's a conveyor belt, and you show up and you do your time and you leave after the guy in front of you, and the guy behind you stays behind you. And that the professional career became more of a challenge almost than my personal side of trying to fit into naval aviation kind of as an outcast.
Well, and because you have to explain every time, are you the dumbest lieutenant junior grade you have here, or what is it? And you have to explain the medical history problem and why you now are maybe seen differently than what other guys have been able to do. Before we run out of time, there were so many medical off ramps you could have taken and just sort of let that dream or goal go away and find another one. And I think that rings true with a lot of people facing adversity. But Derek, your story is really there for them to realize you may have to change the dream a little bit. You may have to go a different route, but you didn't give up the dream, did you?
No, I think what a dream means to every person is what it means to that person. And for me, when I set myself on this dream to fly, that was it, right? And especially when I got that taste and I'm in the squadron and I had it for a short time but lost it, that it was easy to give up and move out. But I just wanted that again, and I was going to do everything possible to get back no matter what that took.
Well, this is I want to read a couple of lines here from the conclusion before we run out of time. This is the conclusion, and I'm quoting from the book. There was a time when I believed life followed a neat, predictable path with checkpoints and milestones laid out like a flight plan, leading to some picture-perfect destination. But life doesn't work that way. It throws storms in your path, forces you into uncharted airspace, and sometimes rips away the very things you thought defined you. The key is learning to navigate the turbulence, to stop chasing an illusion of an unattainable perfect future and find joy in the moment you're in. Really well said, and I think sums up the advice you're trying to give people in Unbreakable Wings, piloting the impossible journey through cancer and naval aviation. Derek, if folks want to find the book or find you, how do they do that?
You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn. There's quite a bit of information and profile there. The book is on both barnesandnobles.com and amazon.com, and then the publisher ballastbooks.com. They have it there as well. And so it's pretty readily available, both hardcover, paperback, and the Kindle version.
And it's Derek, D-E-R-E-K, Adametz, A-D-A-M-E-T-Z. For those of you who are trying to put it in a search engine and say, I can't get it's not the normal spelling of anything. So, Derek, thanks for taking time to talk to Veterans Radio today. I think your story should be inspiring to many. We've all had challenges in life, maybe not a series of medical challenges like you have. And most body parts are still working, it looks like. So that's good, too.
Yeah, I'm still all in one piece. There's definitely a lack of veins in my arm from some chemo track and some moments there. And we won't even get to the Jolly Rancher story. I'll leave that to the readers to enjoy that.
Well, good. And thanks for talking to us today, Derek.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
And I want to thank everybody for listening to Veterans Radio today. I am Jim Fausone. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm a veterans disability lawyer at Legal Help for Veterans, and you can reach us at 800-693-4800 or legalhelpforveterans.com on the web. You can follow Veterans Radio on Facebook and listen to its podcasts and internet radio shows by visiting us at veteransradio.org. That's veteransradio.org. We again want to thank our national sponsors, the National Veterans Business Development Council, nvbdc.org, Legal Help for Veterans, a veterans disability law firm with a national practice before the VA, can help you on your claims and your appeals. It can be reached at legalhelpforveterans.com or 1-800-693-4800. And PuroClean, a leader in property emergency services. It's the paramedics of property damage, providing water damage remediation, flood water removal, fire and smoke damage remediation, mold and biohazard cleanups. You can reach them at puroclean.com or 800-775-7876. We also want to thank our local sponsors. This would include the Charles S. Kettles chapter of the Vietnam Veterans of America, that's chapter 310, VFW Graf O'Hara Post 423, the American Legion Irwin Preskin Post 46 in Ann Arbor as well, the VA Ann Arbor Healthcare System, and certainly the National Vietnam Veterans of America Association. You can be a sponsor by going to veteransradio.org, clicking on the About Us and our sponsors, and help us out. Keep this program alive for the 21 and 22 years. Keep us going for another 20. Thank you.